Welcome back, I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Online, the Designs Dissected series, where we have our AI, DesignEye, look at a previous competition piece of mine and analyse it in terms of the principles and elements of design, give us some feedback on that, and then some suggestions for improvement. This design we're looking at this week, the title was Square Dancing. As you can see, it was staged on a plinth that was supplied 60 centimetres square. It's judged all around, which, as you know, means that it has to look interesting from every angle because the judges will walk around and assess it from every angle. The design itself placed second. My thinking when I was putting this design together was that it's part of a very large agricultural show, and so I wanted to reflect the agricultural side of it as well as the more usual interpretation of square dancing. So I've got the burlap Hessian jute bag at the base, and in that I've put some Banksia flowers and some Banksia foliage, and then inside in the centre of that bag there is stacked together some cardboard boxes that have been covered with a checked gingham fabric to indicate the country dresses that might be worn by the ladies who are doing the square dancing. The top box has got some floral foam in it, and then it's got a range of chrysanthemums and dahlias that were supposed to look like they were dancing around the wheat stalks that are in the central part of that design. I think I've missed the mark with the dancing side of it. One side of it looks okay, the other side of it they all look a little bit too straight, and in looking at this image now, I wonder whether I was just so completely tired in putting these designs together, because this is part of a competition where I stage overnight. So I get there at midnight, have to be ready for judging by 8 o'clock in the morning, and I usually have 6 or 7 designs that I have to stage in that period of time. And I can see that I've obviously put it together looking at it from one side and not moved around to see what it was like, because I know that my idea was to have the flowers, the floral part of it, dancing, spinning around that centre point to make it look like they were twirling around in their dancing motion. So let's now see what DesignEye has got to say about this design and what I could have done to improve it. So in our analysis with DesignEye, looking at line, first of all, vertical lines are prominent in this design, primarily created by the wheat stalks and the stems of flowers, which lead the eye upward and add height. These lines add a sense of rhythm and movement, enhancing the visual flow. And you can understand now that yes, the wheat stalks will always be that very strong vertical line, but had I had all of the stalks of the chrysanthemums at a diagonal spinning around, there would have been even more movement and visual flow that would have been within this design. So shape and form. The arrangement has a square and somewhat tiered form due to the stacked boxes. This gives it a structured, geometric appearance, softened by the natural elements like flowers and the burlap surrounding it. So very much what I wanted to portray. I wanted the square side of the square dancing to be portrayed in some way in the design itself, and I think the boxes do that well. Because it's on a square base, you get that repetition as well from the base, even though there's no, the base isn't part of the design, but your eye does tend to look at that, and that forms the framework for what you see as the space around the design. Colour. The colour scheme includes earthy tones from the burlap and wheat, contrasted by the softer pinks, purples and whites of the flowers. This combination provides warmth and a natural feel, with the gingham pink wrapping adding a playful rustic touch. So obviously I wanted to match the pink and white in the fabric, in the gingham fabric, but then I've got a couple of darker colours just to add a little bit of dynamic and tension into the design. Texture. The design features a variety of textures, including the roughness of the burlap, the smoothness of the flowers and the spikiness of the wheat and other dried elements. So that's the Banksia flowers. This contrast in textures creates visual interest and adds to the tactile quality of the piece. I do think that in terms of texture, I've got a good balance there. It does reflect a whole lot of different textures without any one of them overwhelming the others. So I'm happy with that part of it. Space. The design fills the space effectively with balanced proportions between the solid and empty areas. The square boxes add volume without overwhelming the design, while the negative space around the flowers allows each element to be viewed clearly from multiple angles. I think this is where I could have improved it when I look at it now. If I had a little bit more space around the flowers, they're very densely packed in there. I varied the heights of them and spun them around so that they looked like they were twisted around that central wheat axis, I would have been happier with the design. Balance. The design achieves a sense of balance through its symmetrical structure and the even distribution of flowers and other elements around the central boxes. The burlap at the base stabilises the design visually and physically. And in looking at it, that hessian, the burlap at the base, is probably a little bit too high in the design. It's a little bit too dominant at the base, so it's bringing your eye back down to that base area. But I'm sure we'll get to that in the suggestions a bit further on. Rhythm is achieved by the repetition of similar flower colours and textures, guiding the viewer's eye around the piece. The wheat stalks provide a rhythmic upward movement that enhances the design's flow. And as I've said all along, had I had those flowers in that very twisted form, giving the diagonal line around them, there would have been more movement, there would have been more rhythm in the design. That said, having said that and looking at the image, I would have to have had that reflected in the Banksia flowers that are in the burlap bag at the base, because I couldn't have them placed haphazardly if I had a very structured spin at the next level up. Emphasis. The tall wheat stalks act as a focal point, drawing attention upward. The gingham boxes add contrast and serve as another point of interest that leads the eye downward to the burlap base. Once again, I think the burlap bag at the base is a little bit too high. I would have pushed that down a bit more, and I would like to have been able to see the boxes a bit more. Harmony and unity. The design elements work well together to create a cohesive look, with the natural and rustic materials contributing to a harmonious aesthetic. The burlap, gingham and flower choices give it a rustic country-inspired unity, which is good, which is what I wanted. Proportion. The proportions between the boxes, flowers and base elements are generally well balanced. However, the tallest wheat stalks are slightly disproportionate to the rest of the arrangement, which could detract from the overall harmony, and I think that's very true. It's for me, the overall harmony within this design is spoiled somewhat by the starkness, the tallness of the wheat stalks above that area of where the flowers are. And once again, had I had them spinning around and had them in varying heights, I think it would have added to the harmony and the unity of the design. So let's now see what DesignEye has got to say for me about things that could be improved in this design. Refine the top element. The wheat stalks at the top are quite tall compared to the rest of the arrangement, potentially drawing too much attention and disrupting the proportional balance. Trimming them slightly might help balance the height. Very true, very much my feeling now on reviewing this design. Enhance the depth. To create more depth, consider arranging the flowers in staggered heights or layers, allowing each to stand out more individually. This would add dimensionality to the design, enhancing its all-around viewing quality. And I think that's very true. I think that idea that came to me when we first started looking at this design, very much the case. I've got too many flowers in that middle section where the chrysanthemums are. I think it needs to be spaced out a bit more so that there is space around the flowers, and they need to be going in that circular motion at staggered heights so that it looks like it's a dancer spinning around. And as I said just a little bit of time ago, that then means that pattern would have to be reflected in the placement of the Banksias in the bag at the bottom, because at the moment I've just put them in as a bag and just made it look like, that's the corner of the country barn where we're having the dance, but they would need to be far more structured in their placement to reflect the movement that is at the next level up with the coloured flowers. Consider height variations. Instead of a uniformly tiered structure, varying the height of the boxes slightly could introduce a sense of movement and make the arrangement more dynamic. Now that's a really interesting suggestion, and certainly one that I would consider, even if tilting the boxes at odd angles to one another might have given it a more dynamic look and a bit more life. So very much useful suggestions that have come out of that analysis from DesignEye. So there is our assessment for square dancing for this week. As always, if you would like one of your designs analysed and get some feedback and some help in looking and reviewing at your designs and improving on your floral art journey, all you need to do is go to the website and upload an image, and within about 24 hours you'll have an assessment back, very much like this. Each of the assessments, once it's done through DesignEye, is reviewed by a human judge, just to make sure that all of the suggestions and the information are going to be useful to you. So we encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity to help you on your floral art journey. For now, I'm Kim Bailey, and this is Floral Art Online.